This is work.
What's up, Mike?
We're giving eyes and ears to AI. So the world becomes your prompt and your interface. This is work. Working. These are thoughts happening.
Hey, Copilot.
Plans populating.
Copilot, when was this last replaced?
Information gathering. Instructions guiding. Schematics aligning. People connecting. Problem solving.
Copilot?
Hey, Copilot. Copilot.
This is confidence growing. Eyes widening. These are questions.
I just finished Copilot. What's next?
Rotate the engine block 90 degrees.
Questions the way you ask them.
Please get me the detailed view of the optical cable layout.
Never too many questions.
All right. Let's highlight the relay switches.
Go ahead. Keep asking.
It's in position. What's next?
Keep learning.
The hydraulic filter was changed 6 months ago.
Okay, can you pull up a service record?
Copilot, what's the tolerance of this locking ring?
Here is a copy of the last service record. The tolerance is 9,000ths of an inch.
Remind me where this fits into the assembly.
Step 4, align the spindle. The locking ring is highlighted.
This is work getting smarter. This is work working better. This is work working. This is work making sense of the world around you.
Copilot, let Ruth know that I'm finished and close out the work order.
This is AI for the front line.
And this is not that far from reality. About 2 years ago at an SAP conference, I saw a first use of virtual glasses in a manufacturing environment, and it was basically bullshit. But it presented really well, and it's coming sooner than we know it. And earlier today, you heard Andy, and at a SAP partner kickoff meeting earlier this year, their chief partner officer talked about how AI was going to be a bigger revenue opportunity for partners than ERP. So we're going to break down today into 4 different sections. I'll try to get through a lot of information so we can have some Q&A, but here we go, AI, right? I truly believe that our business management software world will be dramatically impacted over the next 3 to 5 years. Today, the cost of AI is probably higher than just having an army of people do the work. By some estimates, ChatGPT is costing Microsoft and OpenAI hundreds of thousands of dollars per day just to have it there without it even doing anything. But as the economies of scale grow and more people pick up on this stuff, a wider array of repetitive tasks will be replaced by computer automation using AI. And this will happen, and it's us to figure out how this will affect our practices, and hopefully today we'll come up with some ideas. Earlier, I don't see BJ in the room, he asked me if I was an AI expert, and I said absolutely not. I will never use AI the way a lot of the people in this room will use AI, so I've got a lot of big brains who we're going to channel into the room today because I watched their videos and I've played with AI a little bit, and I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express. But we're going to start with some baseline terminology. And so, if you look at AI, the definition, according to the Oxford Dictionary, is the theory and development of computer systems able to perform the tasks that normally require human intelligence, such as visual perception, speech recognition, decision-making, and translation between languages. Basically, AI is the ability for a computer to think and act smart, right? And one of those big brains is this guy, Ray Kurzweil, and most of the stuff that I'll have in this presentation, I'm going to have a bunch of references in the slide deck, which I think will be available to everybody at some point in time as soon as I get it to Ann. But Ray predicts within 5 years, AI will reach the level of human intelligence. So within 5 years, AI will be just as smart as we are. But first, there are a lot of things being called AI today. And the first one is a lot of things which are really defined as robotic process automation. So this is where computers perform tasks based upon specific instructions. So, this is us automating things that we have programmed the computer to do. What we saw right before with SimCloud, that's a form of robotic process automation. We teach the computer how to bring in orders from the website, how to synchronize inventory, and it does exactly what it tells, we've told it to do. It's really automated, and we can add a lot of complexity to that automation through if-then and case statements and all that kind of stuff, but it's still only doing what we told it to do. Now, there are different levels of artificial intelligence. The first one is narrow or weak, where we basically teach the AI to do a singular task, facial recognition, playing chess. And sometimes these AIs are way better than we are at doing it, right? Watson beats the best chess masters today. And many people are calling what they do AI, but really in order for it to be AI, the computer has to be able to think. So if you think about Watson and chess example, they did not teach Watson every single permutation of every move in chess for every possible combinations of positions on the board. Watson had to figure that out by itself through repetition in order to get better and better and better until it could beat people, right? And that learning component is the key component of artificial intelligence. So the next level is artificial general intelligence, which is also known as strong AI. People use different terms, but AGI, as it's defined by the experts, not me, is still a hypothetical form of intelligence where the machine can learn and think like a human, but beyond that singular task, right? For AGI to be possible, it will need some additional awareness and be able to solve problems and adapt to situations that it has not thought about in advance. So in this particular circumstance, like think about driverless cars. If the whole world were filled with driverless cars, there would be no accidents because they would all perform according to the rules. But there are people, right? And we are irrational, and we get distracted, and we walk across the street when we shouldn't. So there are literally armies of gig workers around the world being paid pennies per hour, doing nothing but putting circles or squares around people in pictures so that driverless cars can know, oh, that's a human. I got to think differently because they're not going to act rationally. So we keep teaching the computer how to get smarter, and we'll talk about this in a second in machine learning, but even the strongest artificial intelligence today, ChatGPT, whichever one you think it is, does not consider itself to be AGI. The final type of artificial intelligence is superintelligence. And this is where the computer is self-aware and can think in abstractions and interpretations better than humans can, right? Some people think that artificial superintelligence will be the last invention humans ever make. Because if it is smarter than us and it can think faster than us and it can anticipate problems, it should be able to figure things out before we can. So we're not there yet. Some people, you saw Hal in the last one. Everybody know who Hal was? 2001: A Space Odyssey. So people like this guy over here think that an ASI is going to kill the human race, right? He thinks that if we had enough time and we could train it and repeat our training over and over again, we could teach it not to kill us. But he also thinks that they'll kill us before we have the chance to do that. So to me, all of this stuff is really confusing, right? There is so many terms and terminologies, and they seem so intertwined. So this came out of my brain, right? But nothing in my brain hasn't been thought of before, right? I truly believe that there is absolutely nothing new in the world, and I just came up with this as my way of organizing thoughts. So I start with infrastructure and ginormous data. And I think about that as being our brain and our lifelong experiences. And then we have machine learning, which is our intellect and our ability to think. And then we have a whole bunch of tools. And tools are like our coping mechanisms. Like, I don't know if any of you had ADD children, and so you taught them how to make lists, or maybe we use calculators or computers in our work. Those are tools. And so that's kind of how I kind of put things into categories or classifications the way an AI would do in order to understand it better. And it all starts with large language models, okay? And this is the ginormous memory of AI. So if we think about 1 gigabyte of data being 178 million words, right? And then we create these large language models by running parameters, yes, no questions. Computers are all on and off, and I know there are programmers here who probably worked in machine language way back in the day. But so they run these yes, no questions against huge amounts of data like the internet, and come up with these large language models which are used in what's called the neural network. So size is based upon the number of parameters, and a medium-sized model like this, Llama 2, which is the, I think that's the Google DeepMind one, right? That is 70 billion parameters, right? GPT-4 is 1.76 terabytes of parameters. So running these takes huge banks of computers, running through these yes-no questions 1.76 trillion times to create this large language models, which then these other things run off of, right? And whose data is it anyway? We'll cover that in a second, but you got GPT-4, that's the ChatGPT OpenAI. Ernie is Baidu, it's a Chinese company, right? Gemini is owned by Google DeepMind. Olympus is Amazon's. Anybody who's anybody in technology, I guess even Sage now, is building their own large language model, right? So it's a huge amount of data crunched into simple yes, no, so that we can run against it fast with our AI stuff. And that's when we get to this machine learning. And if you look at machine learning, there are different types of machine learning, but if you could read this, that it wasn't so small. If you look here at the start with supervised learning, and then at the top is classification, putting things into buckets, right? So we're teaching the computers to learn similar to the way that we learn, right? Then there's regression. So I don't think there are any NetStock people in the room, but we know that they use RPA to come up with purchase orders based upon a volume of transactions using different regression models, right? Same kind of stuff. You've got unsupervised learning, which has a whole bunch of different methodologies for the computers to go through this in a repetitive manner in order to figure out what the right answer is, what the next word should be that it's writing in that blog post using one of these tools that we'll go into a second. And then the last one there is reinforcement, and there's a lot of reinforcement, and that's the same thing with that driverless cars example. The computer runs through a thing, comes up with an answer, and then we tell it, oh, that's a good answer. Do that again. Oh, that was a bad answer. And then tweak the code, tweak the parameters, tweak the prompts until it becomes more accurate. And that's how it learns. So then I'm going to have to thank Moira for part of this next slide, which are the tools. So there are just a gazillion tools. It's like crazy, dizzying how many of them there are. So these tools are basically taking the machine learning and the large language models and packaging them for you to use in whatever it is that you're going to build, right? We talked, there's really kind of three learning ways. There's the pre-training, which creates the large language model. There's what's called fine-tuning, which is improving the labeling so that it can work better. And then there's typically reinforcement from human feedback. And then people put that together and sell it as a tool for you to use. Like I started using this one, Ryter, R-Y-T-E-R, that I got from this page that Maura gave me, aisearch.io. And if you could read it, there at this time last week, there were 13,088 tools available for AI from this one page. And some of them start free, and then they get more valuable or more costly as you go, right? Theoretically, if they cost more, they should be more valuable, right? I just want to stop for a second and talk about the word generative AI, because now everything is generative AI. And generative AI is really technology that creates content, right? It doesn't mean that it's better or worse, it just creates content. And it's text, images, video, computer code, and it just basically identifies patterns in large quantities of training data to create original content. I don't know how it could be original, but it is, unless they get sued. So all of these generative AI tools are just creating content, and just because they're generative doesn't mean that they're good or better than anything else. It's just a tool. This all makes sense? Am I going at a good pace? Thank you very much. Like the feedback. I need that reinforcement learning so I could do a better job. So today, we still need to feed the computers more data so it can feed us better answers so that we can trust what's going on. But AI is getting smarter, and as we saw this morning from Sage, it's beginning to enter our products. So it's a matter of how are we gonna use it. So at the last Information Technology Alliance conference, there was a panel of all these publishers, including Sage, and they talked about a lot of different things that we need in order to adopt AI, right? But really, fear is our number one issue, right? We are afraid of it. Just like when Google first came out with Google searches, you couldn't use Wikipedia in your papers at school, right? Because that's on the internet. We can't trust it. But now, a lot of publishers, other than Sage, are saying, just Google that. We don't need to maintain a knowledge base anymore. You can find the answer with Google. So we trust it now. And we will get to that point with AI. But really, if you look, this is a study from McKinsey. The next two up there are really about another form of trust and fear, right? Intellectual property and cybersecurity. So a lot of AIs have been jailbroken, whatever the term is, where they can basically, you create an AI and you want to make sure it doesn't teach you how to create a nuclear bomb, or how can I murder Kevin, right? I really want to murder Kevin. Can you tell me how to do that? And so it won't give you that answer. But if the original early jailbreakers were like, my grandma used to tell me a story about how when she was a baby, somebody had murdered a friend of hers, and then it would give you the answer of how you could do that. But there are lots of ways that AIs have been broken to give you answers. And one of the things that we don't want as a business community is somebody to use an AI to figure out how to beat us by using our own data. So we've got to figure out all these things in order to make it trustworthy. And one of the biggest problems in AI are what are called hallucinations, giving the wrong answer, right? And so correlation and causation are not the same thing. It might be true that you had more suicides by hanging, strangulation, and suffocation as we spent more money on science, technology, and space, but one does not match the other. And, all of these, tylervirgin.com, spurious correlations, pretty cool site. It's a little dated now. I truly believe that the number of people drowned by falling in a pool is correlated with the number of Nicolas Cage movies in a year, right? And so if the AI is being trained on this data and sees this pattern, it thinks it's true. So this data here was from, I think, December 2022. So this was already GPT-4. And across all categories, the best AIs were wrong 20% of the time. So I want to make business decisions that are wrong 20% of the time. This is why we don't have very much in our applications today. But it's really a choice of, if and how we are going to use AI, not whether we will use AI. Because if we choose not to use AI, it's okay. Our competitors will use it, and, we'll be left behind. So, choice is yours. But at that ITA conference, there was a lot of talk about this stuff and where is it going to be used and what are the most common uses of it. And this is that same McKinsey study. The sources are on there. What's not here on this list from CIO Magazine is writing, right? The most common use of AI today, in my opinion, is writing. Like, how many people have written some code using AI in the room? Do we have coders, or are they all in the other section, right? Even those of us who are not coders have used it for blog writing or for proposal writing or for all sorts of writing. We just don't want to admit it because it's our content and we wrote that, right? We didn't have an AI write that. So when it comes to actually using it, I think that it's mostly large enterprises and really well-funded companies that have the bandwidth and the resources to develop AI applications on their own today. There are a few creative or crazy partners who are trying to write stuff with AI now. But I really think that what we'll see, and what actually I didn't know that we were going to see, was the use of chatbots in the ERP. And that's going to be here in pretty much no time, because I saw a video of how to use Microsoft Copilot in pretty much any ERP today, right? There are ways for it to just read the help files, feed it the help files. Now you can ask it questions and it'll find the answers for you. So it's no offense to Sage, it makes perfect sense that that's where we start, because not only is it easy, it's practical, it's useful. So really, when we had Acumatica, Sage, Workday, and NetSuite on the stage, they all talked about these three things, the trust, the data protection, the security that we talked about. And the clear governance model is really, whose data is it anyway? And who gets to use it? And it was really interesting. I won't name names, but one of them talked about having an opt-in strategy, like you had to opt in to us using your data. And then one of them talked about an opt-out strategy until somebody called them out on it. Oh, I'm sure it's an opt-in strategy. But it sounded to me like an opt-out. We'll use your data unless you tell us not to, right? In any circumstance, it's really important for people to know whose data is it and how is it going to be used. And I think, and I assume every responsible publisher is going to have a white paper on how they do that. So today, what we really have is this robotic process automation. And with the low-code, no-code tools, which are being taught across the hall, if you think I'm boring, but BPA platforms, say hi, Nicole, are available for you to basically drag and drop integrations and workflows and automations today. And we did some really cool stuff with automating packaging based upon advanced units of measure, and just for creating labels for a third-party logistics provider to pack and we just printed the labels, told them what to do, and they just did it all from within the ERP and sent it to them electronically, and they picked, packed, and shipped for one of our customers. And this just saved them basically 1 day per Macy's order per week. You know, that one person all day was just saying, oh, how many could I fit in this box? And tomorrow, I think GM from Stewart Technologies is going to be giving examples of how to use Knowledge Sync, Sage Alerts, and workflows at 10 a.m. So that's available today. And I'm not going to go through everything that's on these slides, but you have artificial narrow intelligence really starting to enter ERP today, right? We heard about, I added a Sage Copilot on there, so it would be on my slides. See, I'm a good boy. Really, to me, that's taking that robotic process automation to the next phase. So again, if you had something like NetStock, imagine that NetStock, which normally takes data out of your ERP, right? How many orders you have, matches it with regression analysis and makes some really good projections, right? But now imagine that it could also go out and look at some of these large language models and look at other people who are in your industry of about your size and your region and use their trends too to come up with better predictions for you. That would be cool if you had access to their data. So if we just go to the two sides and we start with Microsoft. Microsoft, with all of its Azure tools and all of its copilots and all of its components and all of its complexity and confusion, is packaging that and talking about it as the ERP of the future. So the whole idea is that you'd be able to use Copilot to ask your ERP any question, yada, 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 and then it's going to come up with all the answers for you. It's interesting, but the really good part about the Microsoft stack, especially if you're using like a Sage Partner Cloud and the Azure data thing, it knows who you are when you log in and what access you should have to that ERP and what data you're allowed to use. Right? So that's part of that governance model when the AI gets into the ERP. And so Microsoft, even though it's partnering with OpenAI, and I can't remember the name of that French company that it actually just came out that they also invested in, that's a competitor to OpenAI, they're going after multiple sources of data and building all the tools themselves. On the other side, I also have some insight into the SAP approach. And this is their architecture, and you can see that they have all the third parties that they have made some investments in as well, but they have come to the conclusion that they're not going to build those pieces. They're going to build their own Copilot, they call it Joule, and then they have their business transformation platform. Everything has to be a TLA, BTP. So with that, they're telling partners you should build in the BTP using our tools so you can use our Copilot, and then it'll feed any of our SAP applications, similar to the kind of story with Sage. You know, I guess that you guys all collude together to come up with the same ideas. But what's really kind of interesting is that about 3 or 4 years ago, they came out at a show with this Alexa integration, which was really, it's Alexa, so it's not artificial intelligence. Right, it's word association or whatever, and you could ask Alexa, how much of item 1, 2, 3, 4 do I have in warehouse 100? And if you asked it in the right order, it would actually give you the answer. If you asked it in the wrong order, it had no idea what you were talking about. But the newer ones actually understand that. And there's a company here at the bottom, that mywave.ai, who built a chatbot using BTP for S4HANA as part of their Rise and Grow and whatever S4 is. And because they wrote it in BTP, it's available for Business One. And the voice that you're activating it through, the user interface, is Teams. So it's going to be pretty cool. I'm going to see it in April, and I can tell you about it after I see it. But it's just amazing how quickly this stuff is coming. So what about us? Are we going to be replaced by armies of robots? Again, another smarter person than me, the first female CEO of IBM, really thinks that we're not, right? how many programmers out there that use AI today say, please take this tool away from me. I really want to focus on syntax. No, it's like making them more efficient by writing some base code. And I was actually talking to somebody who said, oh, when I use my AI, it's 98% perfect. And so I started asking them questions. Well, we do have to rearrange all the fields on the screen because it doesn't know what order is going to be useful for us. And yes, I have to do this too. And yes, I have to do that too. So really, it's taking away the basic rudimentary tasks to leave the creativity and the human interaction to us, right? I really liked the Soul of the Enterprise episode number 478. Which was an interview with Aaron Harris, right? And he talked about the shifting role of the accountants from doers to reviewers. And I think that's really what's going to happen with us, in that a lot of the work that we have to do, the mundane tasks, will be replaced by AI. So where is this happening today? It's really everywhere. And when I saw this kind of chart, this is from that lifearchitect.ai. This is some Mensa guy. But I focused on the accountant and the consultant and tried to look into those more. And at a recent CPA Today conference on AI, one of the big problems in the CPA industry is, where are we going to get enough accountants? And this guy was like, don't worry about it, right? Especially in tax. As these people retire, we'll just get an AI to do it. It's just following rules, it's tax. The creativity in tax, where you want to break the rules, that's where we'll need people, but we won't need as many people to do tax returns, right? Boston Consulting Group did a study where they had two groups of consultants doing work, and the consultants using AI completed 12.2% more tasks while doing it 25% faster. Pretty impressive. 40% higher quality results. And they only had a 19% error rate, where their answers were wrong. But I do think this is going to come into our implementation, right? If you think about these low-code, no-code tools, we can write integrations way faster than we used to, right? And so that's here already today. But now imagine that these low-code, no-code tools that we're using for robotic process automation can be embedded into our applications, and they can be using AI to continuously improve. So I don't know how many of you have ever written an e-commerce integration, and then there's some condition that you hadn't thought of, or all of a sudden they start putting the same item in 6 categories, and we had categories mapped to our product lines, and it's not working. But if the AI has seen that 100 times, it probably knows how to deal with that now, or knows how to send you an alert, or at least notify you that here's a situation that you need to address. And so it might start with just simple things for us, but it's going to come. The one that I really think will be most important, if as consultants we listen to our publishers and we focus on an industry and maybe focus on converting people from QuickBooks to Sage 100, and now we do that for discrete products distributors in, let's say, the wine and beer industry, and we do that 20 times, and we're training an AI to do the data conversion for us, now maybe it can actually do the data conversion for us because we've given it the prompts, we're giving it the repetition, and then we don't have to do that really tedious, I got to remove all these commas kind of work, right? Let me get these special characters out of here. The AI can remove special characters. We don't need to be doing that anymore. I know it's only a search and replace or whatever is your method, but why should we have to do those things? I think Michelle, Data Self, Zap, these are areas that are really going to be improving really quick. We talked about NetStock. Even those kind of things are really using business intelligence to get more precise using AI. Imagine that instead of just saying to the AI, hey, Copilot, give me this year's versus last year's income statement. And you could say, could you benchmark me against companies in the Southern California area within my industry of companies within this size range? That might be more interesting data than just this year versus last year, right? And this is where I think that the co-pilots are going to come in really quick, so that this way, when it's month end, people are just asking their co-pilots to go into that data set and give me the answers to the questions that I want. How many of you thought 20 years ago that break-fix support would be outsourced to Intact or Acumatica or NetSuite? Right? We don't really have to do break-fix support or install updates in true cloud environments. But more and more support is going to go into AI and away from the consulting industry. This is Microsoft's Copilot asking a question about what type of depreciation methods there are in Business Central, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, customers will also think that they could implement more and try to do it themselves, and then our job will be the firefighting that we're good at. Now, how much is AI and how much is just automation under the covers? I don't know, but the percentage of AI is growing. So this is a webpage from Workato, who claims to have over 1,000 pre-built integrations with various degrees of functionality into multiple ERP systems, right? They integrate with NetSuite, Financial Force, SAP Business One, and Xero. Now, imagine if you're a partner, I saw Basil here, right? You can now take some of these tools and integrate them with Sage CRM, right? And now all of a sudden you have a more powerful Sage CRM than the competitor down the street. Or maybe you can beat somebody who's using Microsoft CRM because you've thought of a creative way to use these tools. If Phil wasn't across the street, I would ask him, because he does some extuple work, which is kind of whatever, but you could take these financial workflows out of Workato and put them into one of these open source ERP systems, and now those open source ERP systems might be able to compete with Sage 100, maybe. But it doesn't have to be one of us that does it, because somebody is going to do this, and we have to be prepared for somebody doing this. That was another thing that I liked about the interview with Aaron Harris, because I think that all of these things that we've seen in ERP and technology tend to be pendulums, right? We had the mainframe, everything was centralized. Then we got the PC, everything went out into the field, and now we have the cloud, and everything's going back to the mainframe, right? And so we had, best of breed. Then we had all ERP, and now we're probably going to have distributed best of breed again using AI, right? We had the whole, keep it vanilla. No, better custom. No, keep it vanilla. No, better custom. It's just going to be a tool, and we're going to be using it. So we should get ready for it. So will robots replace us? I don't think so. The AI got better at humans than Go and chess because there are a fixed number of permutations. There are only so many spaces on the board, there are only so many moves you can make with so many pieces, and it can go through all those permutations and no. How many of us are like anybody else in the room? Nobody says that they have a doppelganger in here, nobody was cloned, nobody is the exact same, right? We're going to be unique, and we're going to be different. And there is no way that a computer is going to do that anytime in the near future, right? AI, digital brains with large computers. That's the way he describes them. There are rooms full of people saying, holy beep, look at what this thing can do, right? And there a lot of money going into figuring this out. What can this thing do? And right now there's no regulation. There are a bunch of crazy people out there. There are a bunch of creative people out there. And they're going to come up with lots of weird things. So people who are currently in the AI journey, mostly the larger companies today, to some extent, but you think about it, like a lot of AI comes to the consumer first, right? We have ChatGPT now. Anybody can sign up for ChatGPT. We could all use ChatGPT, but nobody's using it in their business apps yet, really, right? Once we get that trust, it'll happen. But companies that are using it are trying to figure out what can we do. You know, if you're just starting out, you're trying to figure out what can I do with this technology. Once you're figured out, I could do all these different things with it, then you got to figure out, what's the best way for me to do this? How can I actually make money doing this? How can I create new products or services using AI, right? It goes from a cost to a revenue or a growth kind of a mindset. At least that's what the people, again, at this, I think this was the McKinsey study again. But what's happening is also that the jobs are changing, right? How many of you got a degree in prompt writing, right? Or you know, data, it's not data architect. There's another term out there for, you know, these figuring out the best ways to organize the data. But really what they are saying, at least in these large enterprises, is that workforces will remain the same or go down 30% or decrease 43%. So 73% of respondents thought that this would affect jobs. But to me, this is just part of the changing demographics today. You've got a lot of Gen Zs who are going out there wanting to start their own businesses, and you got a lot of, I call myself a millennial above the traditional age, who are choosing alternate lifestyles. And so if they get laid off, they'll still have work to do. If we have to teach these AIs how to do things, and then they start doing things, okay? And then you've got these kids who need to write prompts or need to write the next AI, but they've never actually done the work. How are they going to teach the AI if they never did the work? How are they going to reinforce it if they never did the work? We're going to have new problems, and then we'll need people to solve those new problems because we don't have superintelligence yet. So what's really interesting about Shane Legg, who's the founder of DeepMind Technologies, now owned by Google, predicted that AGI would become real between 2025 and 2028. He made this prediction in 2011. So he's a really smart guy. But according to this Life Architect, this was the January, I didn't look to update it for the February number. He says we're 65% of the way there, okay? Even Sam Altman thinks that ChatGPT 4 is not AGI, and maybe 5 might be the beginning of AGI, but he doesn't even think so, right? So the guy is Alan Thompson. He was the former chair of Mensa and an expert in AI. And he's got this great report. It's kind of worth looking at. So from my perspective, if you're getting into AI now, you're not too late, right? This is really just happening. 2024 is going to be a year of hype. Everybody's going to talk about AGI and ANI and all these AI things. And really, we're going to have chatbots. We're going to have really cool chatbots, and it's going to be fun, and it's not going to move the needle quite as much as we think it is in this year. But 2, 3, 5 years from now, this stuff is going to be everywhere, and it's going to be doing work, like real work. But we're going to have to trust it in order to let it in, especially in our markets, because our people aren't going to, we're still moving people to the cloud, right? You're not going to take my Mass 90 away from me, right? I once had a client who was on a really old version, and it was still the character based, and their computers were just not, they couldn't find anybody to keep their computers running anymore. And I can't remember, it was like 3 or 4 upgrades that they were gonna have to go through to get to something. And then you give them the quote, and they're like, well, I'm not gonna do that. Okay, then we could sell you something new. No, I don't wanna give this up, you know? So we're gonna have resistance to it, but the kids who are taking over for the parents, they want that web UI. They want everything to be on my cell phone. You mean I have to use a computer, you know? And really, I think the first thing that's gonna happen is that the voice is going to become our new keyboard, right? We'll just talk to the computer. We'll be like Scotty, you know? Oh, a keyboard, how quaint. But it's gonna happen. So, let's get started. Any questions, thoughts, ideas? How many people are using AI today in their jobs? Yeah, a bunch of people. A bunch of people. And do you want to give it back? You want to say, no, I don't want to use this anymore? How many people don't want to use AI anymore, ever again? Yeah, I don't think so. Wow. Where's Jerry? Jeff? No? Okay. I guess I got the tame crowd. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, I haven't figured out what I want to be when I grow up. So once maybe you could tell me that, but you know, when I look at the work that I do now, I'm really more trying to be strategic in what I do. So really, where I'm starting to use it more and more is in writing. And it's really interesting because a lot of these writing tools give you these potential tones. Do you want a professional tone? Do you want a casual tone? Do you want to write in your own tone? It is nowhere near my tone. It doesn't use as much passive voice or poor search engine optimization or improper grammar as I do, you know? It's not as conversational as I am. It doesn't say 3 times in the middle of a sentence. But so for me, I'm old. I'm gonna use baby AI for a while. But what I'd like it to be able to do are some of the things that my clients wanted to do for them, right? I really wanted to be able to do, because I work a lot with distributors of foreign manufacturers who sell here in the United States. So they often need to do things like figuring out the best way to get a container of materials here, right? Or how much should I get here if it takes 2 to 3 months for it to come, right? Things like that are math problems, I think it should be able to do relatively quickly. I'd really, from an implementation standpoint, I hate data conversion. It's just a waste of time. I don't ever want to do it. And then I don't want to explain to the clients how they were supposed to look at the data before they went live. I want the computer to do that for them because they're too lazy. All right? I would love for Intact to be able to see the bug, identify that it's a bug, and fix the bug before I get the 26 support calls for something I can't do anything about. That's only if you bill by the hour. There's a man over here who will get you out of that. Anybody else have any ideas for what they would want to see? Have you guys, I don't think I have, I think it's probably hidden. Yeah, it's hidden. I have a picture with all the robots. Have you seen like what some of these robots are capable of, like physical robots are capable of doing? I'm always curious as to why people make robots look like people, right? What was the nuclear plant that went haywire in Japan? They created robots specifically to go into that facility and look at how bad it was and what could they do with robots to make it so that they could remediate it. And still it was people controlling the robots, but wow, the stuff that we can build is just frightening in some ways. Yeah. No. Not that I've seen, at least. I think, AGI is still hypothetical, and we got to cross that bridge. But people are trying to think of new ways to cross that bridge, right? So once they cross that bridge, then they'll probably get their AI to figure out the next one, right? Just like we have AIs to write code to create an AI. I mean, it's true. What about data analysis, analytics? Can you picture ways to use that to not just come up with the financial statements, but to come up with the explanations of why the financial statements are the way they are? Right? How many of you had a weather incident that affected the profitability of some of your clients in the past year? What was the real impact of that? Maybe an AI could figure that out. Did I just give away an idea? I don't know. It wasn't mine. I'm sure somebody came up with it first. But you don't have to be the best in order to win the market either.